Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Okay, guys, so we have with us today director Stephen R. Monroe, whose upcoming film HARLAND Manor is premiering on Tubi this Halloween season. So, Stephen, you've done a number of films our listeners are probably already familiar with, including the I Spit on Your Grave remake and its sequel and The Exorcism of Molly Hartley. So, welcome to the show. And our first question here is, how did you get into horror?
The first two films I did were really violent, and the second one that I did, which was a film with Dennis Hopper called House of Nine, was a psychological thriller. But while we were shooting it, people started talking about this other movie that was shooting called Saw, and about people trapped. And this was about people trapped, but it was more psychological. So, of course, as usual, the marketing people were like, oh, let's market this as a horror film. So they did, which, of course, as we know, horror fans, that just made the horror fans mad because it wasn't a horror film. And then I got offered a couple of other horror films, and it just kind of escalated from there until the company Cinetel that was and Anchor Bay that were doing the I Spit on Your Grave remake, and I ran in and begged them to let me direct it because I grew up with the original. So that's kind of how it happened. A little bit of fate, a little bit of accident, you know.
That's funny that you mentioned the marketing, because Tim and I have said that so many times where we're like, we'll see a movie marketed a certain way, and then when you see it, it's so different. And it's not. We don't mind when our expectations are, or what we expect out of thing is twisted in a good way. But when you're marketing something as horror, and then a horror fan goes in there, it could always be a bad mix there if it's not truly horror.
Yeah, and that's what happened with that movie. It kind of got lost in the mix, and also it didn't get. We finished it before Saw was done, but it didn't get released till after. So then it just got labeled a Saw copy and all those kind of things.
That's always the worst when you get like that. Oh, it's this just or like a copy of this underwater or whatever. They'll do like those like it's Jaws on an island or something. It's like. Yep. So actually, I'm glad you mentioned I Spit on Your Grave because that's one of the ones I definitely want to ask you about. Before we get into Harlan Manor, because I actually been a big fan of the original too. It's definitely, of course, one of the most talked about, one of the most controversial, whatever kind of descriptive thing you want to give it. But so it was really interesting. You did you did the remake, both the first and second one, I believe, and they were really, I have to say, they're really both good and in their own way, and I thought were good kind of a evolution from the original, because you had to modernize it in a lot of ways, and you didn't want to have an exact repeat. So I thought you did a great job about that. But what was it like, I guess, when you were able to stay, they said, okay, you can direct this remake to this such an iconic film?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously I was happy because I grew up on the movie, and I also grew up with the films of the 70s that tended to be a little violent and button pushers, and, seeing, things like Straw Dogs and, pushing the envelope with violence and stuff like that. So even my films that I made when I was 8 years old with my Super 8 camera were quite violent also, which is funny because when people meet me, they go, well, you're pretty easy going. I thought you'd be a weirdo, but, so it was, initially I was pretty excited because, remaking a cult classic is an exciting opportunity. And then suddenly it hit me that, this is a bit of a treasured cult classic. And then I realized, if anything goes wrong, my career's over with. So, and then I had to get past Mayor Zarki, who was the original writer-director, who didn't want me directing it because he didn't like the style that I should. He wanted it shot exactly the way he shot the original, which myself and the producers didn't want to do that. So it was, it was rough, and we had a long development process where, you know, it would shift directions a little bit at times, and myself and mostly one of the producers, Neil Ellman, pushed to keep it as close to the original, respectfully, but to update it. And that's pretty much where we ended up. Visually, I brought a completely different style to it. Obviously, if you know the original, it was very static and quite bright, actually. And I did it much more docudrama style, like, you know, almost voyeuristic at times. So, you know, and then it was just as nerve-wracking getting the second one going, because then the expectations of the remake. But I was happy actually with the way the second one turned out. A lot of people weren't, but and then they made a third one that I wasn't involved in at all.
Yeah, and I have to say, the one thing you did look at on, because, you know, obviously Camille Keaton was so iconic in her role, but you managed to get two other actresses I thought did an amazing job, and that is got to be a hard role to take. And, you know, and especially, I mean, Sarah Butler did an incredible job. Of course, she had the tougher one, I think, because she had to, like, you know, she was going to get the initial comparison. But yep. I thought I always forget Jamie Dallender, I think, right?
Gemma Dallander.
Gemma Dallander. Yeah, she in the second one was also blew me away, because there are sequences in that, and that one's, I think, even harder to watch than the first one at some part. The way I like, there's so many times I want to, like, reach into the TV and, like, help her out, because she did such an impressive job of displaying such, like, terror that she had.
Yeah, they were both absolutely amazing, and just, you know, knew from day one that they just had to be completely fearless, you know, both physically and mentally. And, you know, they dove in, and yeah, they both did absolutely incredible jobs. And, you know, and Gemma even had to go through all that in the winter in Eastern Europe, which wasn't, I guess. Well, the interesting thing was, you know, she used it, you know, to use a term that sometimes make people roll their eyes about actors, but the first time they tried to put a blanket over her, she said, "I don't want to be comfortable. The minute I'm comfortable, I'm not doing the right thing with this role." So they both went to hell and back for those roles. And I'm very defensive anytime people are critical of either of them, because they just, you know, and all the male leads also in both movies really went through hell also.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be tough, because, you know, it's like you're you know, you have to get yourself into this, like, just this horrible state to come off as believable in that, and it's got to be hard. Because I remember, I watched that documentary recently, actually, the Growing Up with I Spit on Your Grave, and they were saying a lot of the actors, like, one of the guys said he never even watched the original again for getting into that role. So just, and now you're, you know, with yours, it's, you know, it's even grittier in some spots and rougher at some spots. So I can imagine it's like anyone that's in either side of that role has had to have a really bad, like, rough time, but it seems like it paid off, because both of them were pretty solid films.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you guys appreciated them. It's they're both very polarizing. So, you know, you either get, you know, people did like the movie and understood it and respected it, or, you know, they literally want my head on a spike. It's like there's no in between. Really.
Yeah, I think that's lately, it seems like that's horror. Anyway, people are always on one side of it or the other. So
that's true.
So, Stephen, I hope you don't mind if we switch gears drastically here. But if Brian and I were not running a horror podcast, there's a good chance we'd probably be running a Christmas movie podcast, because we love holiday films. And I could not help but notice you have a ton of those on your resume.
Yeah.
Including one, USS Christmas, which was filmed here in Wilmington, North Carolina. That's my
That's right. Yeah, we were there for we were there, and then we did 4 days in Charleston at the I'm forgetting the name of the ship, but the aircraft carrier there. But 80% of it was in Wilmington. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I remember that was a big deal when they were shooting here. So I got to know how you go from I Spit on Your Grave to Hallmark Christmas movies.
And why wasn't it called I Spit on Your Mistletoe or something?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, and all due thanks and respect to Randy Pope, who's the head of production at Hallmark. He said the same thing to me. He was like, so the guy that did the I Spit on Your Grave movies is going to do a Hallmark movie. And it's one of those things that, I grew up in the industry and I just wanted to be a director. I didn't want to be a particular type of director, because people always go, you must love horror the best. Or when I was doing thrillers, it was, you must love thriller the best. And my response always is no, I like to work and I like doing good projects. And it got to the point where literally rom-com was the kind of the only genre that I hadn't done. So, God bless him, my manager, Stan Spry, who's actually the exec producer on Harlan Manor, pushed, and I got a rom-com with another company that then they showed that to Hallmark, and they opened the doors to me. So it was, it was great. And it's, someone asked me this, I think it was earlier today, actually, and they said, well, the horror films must be a lot harder. And I'm like, everything has their challenges. There's an intensity to horror films, but there's just as much challenges to rom-com. So I worked really hard my whole career to try and not get labeled and just be as diverse as possible in the projects, that I've done. And, that's been a good and bad thing for me, because a lot of producers and networks and distributors don't know what to do without the label on somebody. But then other people are like, oh, you've done it all, so you must know what you're doing. So it's, it's a give and take, but
that's pretty awesome. I mean, but some of the holiday movie fans can be just as rabid as the horror fans. I heard that there was like a holiday movie conventions are starting up now.
Oh my!
There is, and they've got things like drinking games now and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, they are. It's a different group of people for sure. It's more like my mother-in-law, who would never watch a horror film, but she's a rabid, Hallmark fan. So, yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Types of fans, but same passion.
I want to see the cosplay at those conventions. People come as like a present.
Probably like dress up as a present or a gingerbread man or something like that.
Oh, that's a movie in itself right there. It's like the holiday convention movie.
Yeah, I got to track down this Pumpkin Pie Wars, because I'm a big me and Brian are huge pumpkin spice fans. So that
was Pumpkin Pie Wars was the first Hallmark one that I ever did. That was
really
one that I got in on. Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's get into to the latest that you got coming up here, and that's Harlan Manor. Tim and I are really looking forward to seeing this, because this just based off the description, it's totally up our alley. We love the paranormal kind of investigating, haunted house kind of stuff. So we're really waiting for this to come out. So what can you tell us about it, though? No spoilers, of course, but we definitely want to know kind of a little bit about it.
No spoilers, but what I can tell you is what I tried really hard, and myself and the other writer, John Thaddeus, tried to do, was to take that genre, that sect of that genre of the paranormal investigators going in, and did not want to make a found footage film. As a matter of fact, when I first started shopping the script around, I wrote in big bold letters on the second page, "This is not a found footage film," because as soon as people see paranormal investigators, I was getting people to sending the script back saying, we don't want another found footage film. It's not. What we tried to do was to take this fascinating thing that people do and also add a psychological thriller element to it and a dramatic element to it, of the investigators themselves and what they go through and what this process and this job that they have, what that does to them mentally and physically, because it does actually have a big effect on them. And you never really have seen that in any of the movies, studying that area of it. And so we brought that to it. And that's kind of a lot of that comes to light in the second act. And the first act is the setup, the second act is, learning a little bit about these characters, and then end of the second act and the third act is what I call where all hell breaks loose. So
Nice.
that's where I can't get into the spoilers, but they basically, it's their series finale. They're an internet sensation because they go in and provoke the ghosts, as opposed to what a lot of the other teams do on the shows. They actually go in to provoke and see, what buttons they can push, and they definitely go to the wrong place this time.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because we love all those kind of those shows, the ghost hunting shows, and all that stuff. So anytime a movie takes that on, I'm in automatically. It's pretty much a guaranteed we're gonna watch it.
Yeah, well, I hope you guys like the other elements that we brought into it, and also, if you've seen, like I know you guys have seen the I Spit in Your Grave movies, I also work really hard to make the movies visually interesting, and I also don't like to use VFX. So literally the only VFX in this film are a paint out of a couple of stunt rigs and a couple of things in the set that I couldn't touch because it's not really a museum, but we just couldn't get approval to move a few things. So we painted those out, but everything else is done practically, which is, I always try and do in horror films, because I grew up, watching the movies when things were done practically, like The Exorcist was all done practically. And it's, to me, the greatest horror film ever made,
Yeah, I noticed, and a lot of directors are really going back to that, and they're insisting on a lot, and it's making a difference. I think it's making a lot of great horror films these days because you kind of get that nostalgia feel of those practical effects, and you're not, because sometimes a visual effect could totally take you out of the movie when it's meant to do the opposite. And so we're big proponents of the visual practical effects and lesser of the visual.
yeah well, I just think I think blockbusters have just made us numb to visual effects. Nothing is impressive anymore, because it was just 100 people sitting on computers spending a fortune rendering and designing things, as opposed to the filmmakers actually really doing it on set, and the actors doing stuff too.
Definitely.
So Harlan Manor is going to be the final original film appearing on Tubi's, that's their month-long Halloween celebration, Terror on Tubi. So what was it like to work with them? Because I know Brian and I have been really impressed with Tubi lately, like finding stuff that's not streaming anywhere else, or tracking down all kinds of, it's been like a treasure trove to us, especially for the show. We're doing a big horror movie challenge this month where we have to watch 31 horror movies. And I swear, I think half of them have come off Tubi.
Yeah, same here.
No, they've got an amazing catalog of horror, and much to my surprise, I didn't even know it when I first met with them. They were like, "I Spit on Your Grave" is our top title. That was during the summer, but they were absolutely fantastic. The best group of execs / distributors that I've literally ever dealt with, and they were just great. They were trusting, and they were into everything, and they would get excited over dailies, and we get notes, about how great they thought the performances were and how things looked, and it was a great experience with them. I felt really fortunate because, as I'm sure people have heard, it rarely goes that well. And it almost doesn't matter anymore what level you're at. Even on big budget films, the directors are just getting pummeled creatively, So, and I also look, I'm definitely not a believer in let all directors do whatever they want, but when you're working with one that knows what they're doing and they're delivering, then, trust that. And that's what they did. So it was great for me.
And that's cool too, that Tubi has gone from, just having a great catalog to actually getting original content like this. Like there's some of the movies. I watched a documentary that was an original Tubi documentary. I think in the Amityville one was that. Yeah. And so it's really good that and it's pretty good that you're getting in there. You're like the final film out of it. That's going to get some good notoriety, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited, and it's going to be the first horror film that I've ever directed that my two young sons are going to be able to watch because they haven't been able to watch. But they love they love all the ghost hunting shows and all that, and so they're excited, and they're there's some F-bombs in there and some violence, but they're used to that around this house anyways.
Yeah, Tim got his kids really into horror this last year too.
Yeah, mine are 12 and 9, and they'll, I'll let them watch. I still curate what they're allowed to watch.
Yeah, I do
but
too.
but they still, a lot of the supernatural type horror movies are perfect for them, because they don't have gratuitous sex or anything in those.
Exactly. Mine are almost the same. Mine are 9 and 13, but they also, they grew up on film sets, so the violence, they know exactly how it was done. And I got to sit down last month and sit down with them and show them The Shining, and it was great.
Yeah, my daughter watched it. She watched it just a couple of weeks ago, and she watched it twice in a row.
Wow, that's long too.
Yeah, I was impressed.
I warned them. I was like, Kubrick's a master of pacing, and that pacing has a build to it. And they were like, okay, and they loved the pacing. They were talking about composition and everything. It was great. So they're really into it. But the problem now is they're, my 13-year-old's pushing for like the original Texas Chainsaw and all that stuff. So.
Yep, I'm getting the same thing. Yeah. Why can't I watch this? I'm like, I can't tell you why you can't watch this.
Yeah, just trust us on this one.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I keep trying to tell them. But, at that age, apparently, according to them, they know more than their parents. So it gets a little challenging to say, you got to trust what your parents are doing. But.
So here's a little fun question we have for you. I think this will be fun. So what would your ultimate dream project be if time, budget constraints, there was no restrictions, it was that like, okay, here's unlimited funds, unlimited supplies, whatever you need. What would your dream project be?
Well, here's the thing. The one thing I would drop is unlimited funds, because I'm not actually a believer in that. I want just enough to be able to make the movie, and almost just a little bit less, so you're really pushed to work hard. But I have a revenge script that I've had for literally about 27 years that I've almost gotten made about 14 times that I now have, who's become a good friend of mine. Devin Sawa wants to do the lead, and he's
wow.
He's the lead in the new Chucky series now, and
which is great, by the way. He's great, and he's great in it.
It's really good. The dude is just a killer actor, and he wants to play the lead. So we've got a little bit of interest, and it's basically it's a full-on, very intense drama with a very, very violent revenge storyline in there, and in the most oddest sense, it's a love story. So, and it's called The Rightful One. And it's basically a question mark of, a little bit of what we did with I Spit on Your Grave, of what's right and what's wrong and who's right, that kind of thing. But it's about this cop who loses the love of his life, and the justice system doesn't help him. And he has to go out on his own and deal with it. And it's like a big question mark. It's kind of, I would say it's like Death Wish meets a love story. It's kind of
that sounds great. And great.
Cool.
And if Devon Saw was down for it, you got a good lead right there.
He's great, man. He's great, and he's pushing hard to get it made. And he's just a solid dude and a solid actor too, man. The guy's been doing it a long time.
I grew up with him as Casper, so that's
Casper and then Idle Hands.
Yep.
Yeah.
Little Giants he was in too. We played the player that they I guess they got, but he wasn't that good. They just assumed he was really good. But yeah.
Oh, and then Final Destination.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. No, he definitely has good horror cred there.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, do you have any upcoming projects that you're allowed to tell us about?
Well, ironically, since we're giving lots of kudos to Tubi, we just wrapped shooting another. It's horror, but it's psychological based, called Unborn. It's kind of a Rosemary's Baby kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
And we just wrapped that about 2 weeks ago. So I'm editing right now. And I think it's pretty cool. And I had the same great experience with them that I did on Harlan Manor. So I would love to just keep the ball rolling with them and keep doing horror and thriller with them as much as possible. They're fantastic company to work for.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we'll definitely keep an eye on when that comes out and make sure we help spread the word on it too, to keep getting all your projects out there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, man. But I truly let me know what you guys think on Harlan Manor. I'm curious.
Oh, definitely,
yeah,
definitely. As soon as that's available, I'll be watching that. So I guess that's just to wrap things up. I guess if you want to let our listeners know where they can find out more about you if they want, or keep tabs on your social media website, about your upcoming projects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter. I don't do a lot of social media. I had some rough things happen when the I Spit on Your Grave things came out. And started to get a little worried about my family. So I'm not a ton on social media, but all the information about me and all the movies is all on IMDb and all that. I am on Twitter, if it's just Stephen R. Monroe. And you can contact me there. I'm just, I don't go on there too much just because we had a few pretty scary things come up.
Oh, yikes. Well, now hopefully at least we know our listeners will see what a nice guy you are. You won't have to worry about them. We have awesome
our listeners are the best.
Yeah, they actually, and they're big like fans like us of all the same things. It's funny how you I think we're so ourselves on the podcast that's most of our listeners are drawn to that. So we're all, I feel like we've known half of them for all our lives, because they have so many of the same interests with us.
Yeah, well, that's great, and that's why we do this stuff, right? It's just to connect in all kinds of different ways with different people, and but like you said, there are some very angry movie fans out there.
I wish people sometimes remember it's a movie, it's entertainment. It's
supposed to be fun.
Yeah,
and you know what? If you're that upset about it, just turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when people get like angry as if the filmmakers like personally went after them to ruin their lives or something.
Yeah. I mean, literally, what I always just try and do is hope that I'm making a movie that the fans will enjoy and work my butt off to do that. I don't do this for me. I do it for the people watching it, and yes, there are a lot of directors out there that do things for them, but I never understood that.
Well, I know I could speak for Tim. We appreciate all the hard work you and your fellow directors out there make when they make such good movies for us to watch and enjoy. So we're definitely we have the mindset of we'll review a movie, but we also try and always keep first and foremost that the movies are about enjoyment.
Yeah, they are. And look, there's always going to be things that some people don't like and some people do like. You can't really, if you ever think you're going to make everyone happy, you might as well pack it up.
Yeah, I mean, I try still, but it's it
just in life also, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Stephen, for coming on. This was like a real treat for us. I mean, we're a fan of your films.
I'll come back anytime. Let me know.
Yeah, any new projects you got coming up, let us know. We'll be happy to spread the word.
All right, boss. I will come back to you then.